Yeah, so Jason Williams, Charm City PT here from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm kind of define myself as a well-being coach.
Hmm.
So what that means is I kind of incorporate not only just like fitness and Pilates and all that kind of stuff, but it's kind of the whole mindset. So it's meditation, it's Reiki, it's anything to de-stress the body, maybe post-workout
Hmm.
and outside of your workout, so that you can perform at a kind of optimal level.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I kind of move and navigate with clients and class participants and things like that.
Nice. Yeah.
Yep.
I love that title, well-being coach. Like, how long did it take you to figure that out as your where you're gonna land at?
Yeah, it was like one of those. One day I was like, someone said you don't have to necessarily be like just a personal trainer, right? So that was like
Hmm.
always the title.
Right.
Like you can kind of be whatever you want, as you know, we'll probably dive into that later on too. Um, but like you could kind of just be whatever you want. So I said, you know what, I do more than just personal train and do fitness as I'm starting to get into this meditation space. How do I kind of package it all up and not just be kind of put myself in a box?
Yes.
So that's kind of how I came up with, it was wellness, but how do I make it more singular? So well-being kind of felt more correct, I guess, for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I might change. It could always change again. So
For sure.
um, yeah, so I just that's kind of how I came up with the well-being coach side of it.
Yeah. Nice. What's your like? So, what is your kind of like your fitness journey? Like, you started with PT, or like where did you start to get to this point?
Yeah, so my background is in sports medicine.
Okay.
So I got a degree in sports medicine in 2002, moved back to Baltimore, and then started right to personal training. So from there, I kind of found Pilates maybe like 2 or 3 years later after that. I started already kind of dabbling with film rolling and stuff like that and fascia stuff. And then kind of didn't, and this is very early on in the whole film rolling, I guess, world,
Yes.
where it wasn't like very prominent. Like film rollers were still new, kind of.
Right.
So I knew like I liked the longevity of being able to still perform and compete and be able to do things as you get older. And I think
Yes.
that's what drew me to Pilates, and that was kind of like what I was like, that's what I'm missing, and that's what I
Yes.
like. So, got my mat cert, and then moved down more into the city part, less suburbia part of Baltimore or
Mhm.
Maryland, and went to a kind of a more Pilates studio where that was more of the outlook on the human body. So it was like
Yes.
fascia, all that stuff, and I was like,
Mhm.
this is it.
Yes.
Learned, from the trainers there for about 3 years. Left, went to back to a big box gym, and then did my reformer cert there. Started
Mhm.
teaching bar, and that's kind of when the first book happened, became a Lululemon ambassador, all those things. So, yeah, and then kind of like that's when the journey started. So that was like 2011-ish,
Yeah. Yeah.
and 12. Yeah.
Nice. We talk about Pilates and how it's like it's there's not very men in that space. I think there's
Hmm.
even less men in the bar space.
Yeah.
Like like
Yep. It's like
way
no man.
less. Like not. So how'd you get into that? Like,
That was very like accidental. It was one of those things, again, I was at the big box studio, just like the second gym that I was at. They needed a bar instructor, and one of the instructors couldn't show up, and they were like, Jason, you teach Pilates, so can you teach bar? I was like, I guess I can
I
like
guess.
look it up and figure it out.
Right.
So I figured it out and kind of like I taught the class and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the more intricate movements of it, and it was hard, right? And
Yes.
so I started dabbling in that and learning more about that. And then it kind of just kind of came a little more naturally. So I started teaching and the kind of the rest was history. So I've been teaching bar. That was wow, like 2000, same thing, like 12,
Yes.
something like
Yeah.
that, 13.
Wow.
Yeah. So
So you're
I've
like
been
the
teaching.
authority on bar then, basically. If you've been doing it for like 8 years and like the only like dude doing it, you must be like the
Yeah.
man in bar.
Oh, no, I mean there's what's his name from Excel. He's like the man. He's been teaching that for a long time, but I just again it kind of like fell right timing, right place. So
Yes. Yes.
there's so many bar trainings and people who are really good at it. I
Hmm.
don't think I'm okay at it. It's fun. But it's like, but it's just like another thing.
Yeah.
It's fun to do. It's fun to like it not tricks your mind, but forces your mind at other different avenues to use other
Yes,
than just like Pilates or just your typical training. So
for sure. So
yeah,
as Patrick says, would you say that you're a bartender?
the bartender. Um, I guess I am a bartender to a degree, right? Yeah,
Right. Yes.
yeah.
Oh, the puns.
I know, right?
Erica Quest is it there? What's going on, Erica Quest with the Questa?
Erica, what's happening?
And Nikki's gonna be on tomorrow too.
Oh, cool.
So we got some fun people
Super,
coming
super.
up, man. I feel like I have like the stacked lineup this week, man. Like this.
Yeah, and congratulations on that podcast. That's going to be really dope.
Thank you, thank you. And
Yeah.
it's just a natural progression for it.
Uh-huh.
And so I took this weekend for like to kind of prep that,
Yeah.
and I pulled a few people's like conversations, and like a it's almost like a documentary. Like I pulled out like the main piece of their podcast, and then my opening pre-roll is just my commentary on that conversation and what I took out of it, and some of the things that were happening like almost in my world at the
Uh-huh.
time of that conversation.
Yeah.
So like even like this conversation today, like I really feel like I'm pretty somber right now. Like usually I'd
Yeah.
be like cracking more jokes and like
Uh-huh.
talking about like whatever. I'm sure we'll get there, but like just in light of what's happening in our
It's
world,
hard. Yeah.
yeah, I'm coming into like come on,
Mm-hmm.
man, like wake up sort of thing, like that
Yeah.
sort of feel. So I'm sure that will be a piece of this podcast to be like, this is what was happening in our world at the same time. I want to celebrate you and just the amazing things you do. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a heaviness at the same time,
Well, but you should like you have to kind of be with those emotions, right, and those feelings because it's
Yes.
natural and it's what it is, right? So,
Yeah.
I think it's like any other relationship or thing, like you have to give yourself that allowance,
Yes.
right? No matter it does suck like you have to kind of continue your day, same, for all of us, but you have to, be with yourself and your emotions. And I'm sure you will. You'll take your time for yourself, maybe the day that you need,
Yes. Yeah.
and it does, and figure out and be with it,
Right. 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 The
So,
and it's interesting too. I actually like when I have days like this where I have you and then I
hmm
have an 11, 12, 1, before there's an actual break, right? So it forces me to feel it and move on at the same time. And I
hmm
don't feel like I'm being robbed of the emotions. It helps me to process it a little bit
hmm
faster than
Yep.
sitting and just sulking. And this is,
Oh, yeah,
like, yeah, like it's just part of life. And I'm sure we've all had moments where we've had to put our game face on it and still move forward, right?
for sure. Yeah, man. That's real. Yeah. So yeah, you kind of do need something to kind of take your mind somewhere else,
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
than just on the events at hand. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's good to feel it though, like you said, like,
hmm
and and that's, I
It
think,
is.
as men, we get so conditioned, by our society to just shrug it off and
Yeah.
not actually feel it and just move with
Yep.
it, right? So
No, that's for
I
sure.
guess,
Yeah. Yeah. We have to definitely take our time to kind of, and it hits us differently in different times. I mean,
mhm,
I might do a meditation night and feel it, and be like from the whole day,
right.
and you don't even realize it. You're just like, God, and you need it, you need that time, but
Yeah.
again, we've had that conversation just kind of like how men move and how we're expected to move and through life and not, necessarily feel things and we kind
Yes.
of put our head down and just go and work and grind and it's not good all the time, right?
Right.
To be that way. But
Yeah. Um, I saw, yeah, Erica, I love the latest handrail series on your IG, Jason.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Nice. And then Just Five, Jason is absolutely the bartender of Baltimore. Love his clips on Instagram, live Zoom workouts, especially during COVID.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
Yes.
Juliana. Thank you for watching.
Nice. Hi, Troy. Good stuff. Yeah. So we were talking earlier about finding your path.
Yeah.
So, and like that has so many different levels of meaning. So, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think like in this journey of especially of wellness and self-care and self-love, there's so many different modalities out there, right? There's Pilates, there's yoga, there's Reiki, there's massage, there's tapping, there's acupuncture, there's all these things, and it can be a lot, right?
Yes.
And I think for each person, it's about finding their path of like of their journey, right? Like there's not necessarily an end goal, right?
Hmm.
But there's your journey and like how can you maneuver in that journey to
Yes.
feel good and come in and out of certain situations and things, feeling good, and sitting with like emotions of things that happened today or you hear over the weekend, and coping with that, right? And that's
Yes.
different for everybody. What works
Mhm.
for me might not work for you. And I like to think of myself as like the kind of like the door like to where it opens up for something else.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
what works for, like I said, like Reiki may not be it, and I don't tell people you have to do Reiki or you have to do meditation, but maybe that little crack will like open your mind or expand your mind to something else, and you might learn something from like you or another instructor or another practitioner and go another different path, right?
Yes. Right.
So that's kind of how I look at life, and I look at like this whole wellness,
Hmm.
sphere. So
Yes.
yeah,
So you're almost like directing traffic and saying this might work for you or this might work for
yeah,
you, sort of thing.
yeah.
Right. So, and that's kind of like lends into the conversation around personal training that I do, where it's like knowing when to refer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to have all these skill sets, another thing to recognize the end of your skill sets
Yes.
and when to hand them off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's even for me, like, as a trainer, like you're like, okay, yeah, like I may specialize in this, maybe corrective exercise and supplies, but then there's times you gotta send them to a PT or you're like, hey, well, this is a yoga instructor, you should say. Like yes, I like to do yoga, but I'm not. I always tell people I'm not a yoga instructor. Like I leave that for the professionals.
Yes.
All the Sanskrit, that's their thing. Like let
Yeah.
them teach about that. But even when Pilates, it's like, okay, like you should check this person out because they might have a different way. It's kind of like with yoga and anything else. Like some people want to learn the handstands and all the fun and poses, but I've learned this thing just from like very small details from different instructors. And it was
Yes.
kind of like, oh, and then the light bulb goes off, and you're like, oh, that's how you get it, and you didn't realize it. So same
Right.
thing with like Pilates or anything else. It's like someone else might give you another different technique or something to use, and it might work for you.
Yes.
So that's like you said, like referring out. Yeah, you have to kind of like check the ego, maybe sometimes a little bit, right?
Of
Realize that you
course.
can't fix everything or everyone,
Right.
but just kind of be there for them as a support system.
Right. And but you have so many skill sets still. Like even within that, like you can take them through a bunch of them. And I was really like I grew up learning like be the authority on one thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what made you decide to like try Reiki and yoga and Pilates and like why do you feel like you need to have like so many things in your toolbox?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of learning, right? I always say you should keep learning no matter
Mhm.
what, where you are in life. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a master in it or be the go-to person or guru or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's nice to learn a little bit so you can kind of at least speak a little bit about certain things,
Yes.
but also keep it within your box, right? Until
Yes.
your lane. So for me, that was like kind of it. It was like with me, it was like, all right, I like doing yoga, and then people would say, oh, you should become a yoga instructor. Well, no, I don't want to be a yoga instructor,
Mhm.
but I like that meditative side of it, which got me into meditation. And
Yes.
I felt like, oh, this is what I like because I started it for me and I saw the benefits for me. And this is what I wanted to teach and help people learn. And then from there, kind of got into Reiki. And then I saw like, oh, this is another avenue I like to go down.
Yes.
And I have a little bit of a knack for it. So it's kind of like you got to kind of try certain things to find out what is your um, kind of like your lane, right? Or kind
Right.
of your niche, and kind of keep to that.
Mhm.
Like you don't have to necessarily like it's good to learn certain things, but know when you have to check yourself and kind of come back and saying, oh, well,
Yes.
that may not be for me.
Right, exactly. And it's so funny because like by doing that, you actually have a niche, which is a broad niche as opposed to a narrow niche,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
'cause
for sure. Yeah, because you want to always, again, like be able to reach not a certain demographic, but a lot of a broader demographic, right?
Yes.
And at least maybe you're the go-to person, or people reach out to you, hey, do you know a nutritionist, or do you know a
Mm.
dietitian, or do you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I can, refer you to someone, out. So
Right, right, right. Yeah.
yeah.
So I love your title as a well-being coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I call myself a movement specialist. Like
Right.
I feel like that's one of those things where like there's a same path of like, okay, you're not that there's anything wrong with being exclusively a personal trainer,
Right.
but you want to make that title broad enough that people feel like, okay, well, I don't want someone to teach me how to do burpees. I actually want to just feel better. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so where do I
Yeah.
go? Right. Like,
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
when did you come up with your title?
Um, I think my last business card, like,
Yeah.
so like maybe like 6 months ago, because I was like, do I really want to put? I think I had sport conditioning specialists on it, and I thought, okay,
Okay.
well, I still want to have like, and I thought that was fine, except not everyone thinks that they're an athlete.
Yeah. Right.
I think everyone's an athlete,
Right. For
but they
sure.
don't think they're an athlete,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So if you don't think you're an athlete, you're not going to come to a sport conditioning specialist because you're not playing any
Right.
sports.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I like, well, your sport is chasing your grandchild and not being tired at the end of the day.
Right.
You're an athlete, and that's
Yep.
my mindset. But
Yeah.
so I figure, okay, well, let's find something that's a little bit more broad,
Yep.
um, and then that also gives me room for my counseling side. Like I love,
Yeah.
like I mean, that's actually my education. So if I want to be able to help someone move emotionally from one place to another, that's still embodied in movement coach.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, movement specialist. So I think I think it's just a broad enough title that I could frame it however I need to for my elevator pitch, so to speak.
Yeah, you can attract a lot of different people,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, like you were
yeah,
saying before, from like being a sports condition, like people are like, well, he's a sports guy, that means I can't go to him. And it's like, well, no, I can do other things.
right.
So,
Yes,
but now this like, yeah, puts you in this box, not box, but like you can now see like the grandmother who's chasing the grandkids, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
things like
exactly.
that. So
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
that's great. No, I love
yeah.
it.
You can call it a box, man. I'm not afraid of it being a box. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah, yeah,
saying? Like,
yeah. It's still a part of a box, right?
it's still
Yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah, 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 yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, some of our phraseology, like we get so narrow with our phraseology that when we expand it, we're afraid to use that phrase anymore. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's still a box, but that box is big enough that these things can be in that
Yeah.
box. And I want you to come to this box to learn what you need, and then move out from, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I
Yep.
think sometimes like our language restricts us more than the idea, like a silo or whatever, right? Like
Yeah, that's for sure. That's a good
it's
way
like
to put it.
they become swear words in a sense, like, oh, I can't
Uh-huh.
say
Yeah.
silo anymore, right?
Yeah. Right,
Or
right.
I can't say classical Pilates or contemporary Pilates, or I can't, like we
Yep.
have these phrases that we shift so far away from them that the words
Uh-huh.
themselves are taboo, right?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. It's like, yeah, we talked a little bit about that, during the Black Girl Pilates, their event, about
Yes,
like, yeah, confining to the box, and then is it bad to kind of be defined as something, right? And using those
right.
words to define yourself, and but yeah, that's for sure. I think I like that.
Mm,
And I like that you use your counseling side in your work, which is great. And I
yes.
think that does a great service to like how you can present yourself, and
Mm,
how you can um, use that when people are stuck,
yes.
because sometimes it's not just about the movement, right?
Right. No, it's not. And my challenge now is to actually sell a Pilates session with the full intention of part of it being a counseling session.
Mm-hmm.
So think of the person who is going through marital issues or stuck with their job or
Yeah.
transitions. And, it might be difficult or embarrassing to say, I'm going to see a marriage counselor. It's a lot easier to say, I'm going for my workout with my trainer.
Yep.
But
Because
you and I know that half an hour is going to be talking through the area that you're stuck in emotionally or relationally.
right.
And then the other half hour can actually be the movement that you need because you're sitting at a desk all day.
Yeah. And as you know, as trainers and movement specialists, all those things, sometimes we're therapists, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like we talk, like they people tell us stuff,
right.
and you make that rapport, that connection, and you become like, whether you just listen, or
Mhm.
or offer some type of advice, but but like for you, that's great. Like you have that background. That's, that's kind of very rare, right?
Yeah.
In
Yes.
the field we're in. And that's probably something we, as trainers, we all need some type of training or some type of background in, or just to kind
Yeah.
of like, well, what should I say, or should I say nothing, or should I just let them vent, or, you
Right.
know,
Right. Well, like you said, that it is that listening. It's
hmm
listening skills. Ultimately, is what it is. It's just the art of listening. We ask questions, and then we pause because we're waiting to say the next thing instead of actually listening to what the person is replying.
hmm
So it's interesting that if I was Cairo, right, and as a personal trainer, we suggest things, we give movement and stuff, but we cringe when we see personal trainers, myself included, doing things that are outside of our scope. But then
yeah,
we don't think of that for counseling, right? Because our clients
hmm
do share stuff with us, and
hmm
then we be that listening ear, send them on their way. But how often do we actually think I need to refer them to a
yes,
psychologist?
yes,
In the same way, I need to refer them to an osteopath. I need to refer them to an RMT. We
for
don't think about
sure.
when do we refer them to someone for their emotional help as trainers. We figure we can help them with that. We can just listen. It's good. But then when are we outside of our scope from that perspective as well? So that's something that, I think we need to think about more as well. Like you're saying, like what are those soft skills that we need as trainers to be able to recognize when we're helping and when we're hurting by just listening to their story and letting them rehearse their story week over
Mm.
week over
hmm
week over week.
Yeah,
Right?
and it's a sensitive, touchy subject, right?
Yes.
Because no one wants to be told, oh, you might want to see somebody.
Yes.
That could trigger something,
Mhm.
or so it is like, but like you said, if that's part of the training, of like, oh, when is it time, and
Yes.
how do you go about that? How does it look? Um, I think, yeah, I could use that, because I don't know, I don't know
Right.
when, it's appropriate to say that to someone, or use that.
Right.
And they need it, they need to,
Yes.
because I definitely can't do it. So,
Right. Yeah. Well,
um,
yeah. Well, when they're stuck, they're stuck. Like you can hear that. Like if you're training them
yeah,
for like X amount of weeks, and every single week they're bringing up their issue with their teenage daughter
right.
or son or whatever, then it's like, okay, well, um, I don't know, Jason. As I was thinking about that though, it's like, who do you have in your circle of right now, right? So your circle of referrals as a professional, you probably have an RT that you send people to, and you probably have an osteo or a
hmm
physiotherapist, or so I mean, like, maybe it's to just rope, a therapist in there as well. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? To have that in your circle already, be like, these are the people I refer to for this. When they have this, I send them to this, or I say this, that sort of thing. This is the person I think would benefit you to help you to get unstuck emotionally, and that we get more out of our session as a result
hmm
of your head being clear every time you show up, because this person's helping you to put your life back in perspective. Like find your words, find that person, and
Yeah,
that'll probably help in the long term with our training of those people.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, like for me, I think I know like two or three therapists, tops
Yeah,
probably, right? And
yeah,
like I probably should know like 10. Like, because
yeah,
it's like, just because, I mean, like you think about, like, how many, like, your chiropractors, physical
yes,
therapists, tons of them, massage
yes,
therapists, tons of them. But when it comes to like therapists or therapy or psychologists, like, yeah, you maybe know one or two or three,
right,
and one I know is in New York, two are around here, but you don't think much about that, right?
right, right,
So it's like, yeah, I think, yeah, we probably should build that broader connection or database of that,
yes, yeah,
which is
yeah.
good. And that's a really good, that's probably another feature of wellness that's probably not being dabbled in, right?
Right, exactly,
That
exactly.
we could probably definitely use.
Right. But I think of the coaching that needs to happen around that, because whether male or female, there's a sense of defeat when you have to go for help in that way, right? So
hmm
we almost have to walk them in that path of saying, okay, like there's wisdom in getting that help. It's not a sense of defeat in
hmm
getting that help, and this is
Yeah.
beyond me. And like, and to Erica's point too, like we should be happy. We cannot be everything to everybody. Those are good
Yeah.
boundaries, right? Like that's true. Like those boundaries are safe for us, and they actually elevate us as a professional when we recognize the end
Yep.
of where we can practice in the beginning of someone else who's going to help you, improve in that state, right? So
Yeah, that's for sure.
that totally elevates us when we can do that.
Yeah.
Let's reflect on that Black Girl Pilates event for a second. That was
Yeah.
fun to sit in that room. And for those who weren't there, whether you're not black or you just didn't sign up for it, the Black Girl Pilates did a conference a few weeks back, just celebrating all these women who are in the industry, and just supporting them. And they had workshops, and they had people like Sarita Allen, who was able to speak to the history of and the lineage with Kathy Grant, and it was just it was a great event in that way. And then they pulled myself, Jason, and Norris in as well. As I was going to say, Saran, that's his Pilates business name, to talk about the business of like Black men in the Pilates space and in the marketplace. And we kind of just shared our perspective and ways that we can get more men engaged. That was that part we're talking about, like, too, about like in terms of how do we get more men into Pilates and those things as well. And just to continue that conversation, like, how do you feel we're doing with just getting more men connected to Pilates?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing, because we kind of have to make it accessible to them in terms of like, because guys are like want to kind of know like, all right, how's this going to help? Like, and what's this for? So, for example, like you have to make Pilates for golf, right?
Yes.
Because golfers are like, there's a lot of guys who play golf, and they want to say, oh, this is improve my golf game. Oh, yeah, I'll do it. And so you see that. So it's kind of like that. Like it's kind of like you have to kind of make it more of a narrow focus, I think, for men, whether it's Pilates for something or Pilates for rehab or whatever you want to do and make it around, or Pilates for construction workers. I don't know. You kind of have to make it that type of scope for guys, I think, to kind of get them, more interested, at least interested, and say, oh, let me learn. Oh, let me go see what this is about.
Yes. So do you feel like we've just done a bad job of marketing it in general?
Probably. Yeah. I think we haven't marketed it probably like we should. Because not everyone's going to be like us and find it the way we found it and be open-minded to this and think like, oh, this is going to be good for the long term, not just for short term. You know? So.
Right. Yeah. And for those of you who are watching too, I'd love to hear your perspective on that. How do we connect more men to Pilates? Because like what you're saying there, that is like the rebranding of it is probably the simplest and like lowest hanging fruit. Just like relabel it Pilates for blank, right? Patrick, what are you saying? What you guys are doing is helping big time. I think seeing men do Pilates helps remove some of the stigmas that seem to be associated with it. Yeah, and that's exactly it too. And I've got that feedback from some of my friends who don't exercise at all. They're like, when I do a still picture, they're like, okay, whatever. But when they see a video, they'll stop to watch the video because then they get an idea of what actually is happening in that movement. So like he was just saying, videos help.
Okay.
So just, just like for people to see men moving in Pilates, and that the actual videos do help.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're right. And I think we have to do that more. We have to, and do more, combos, or like you and I doing like some movements together, and then they say like, oh, it's more than just one guy doing it. It's like a couple guys doing it.
Yes.
So I think we need to see more of that as a group, like a men's group Pilates type thing.
But I like what you're saying just about the Pilates for.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank, and not just Pilates for golf, baseball, basketball, like you said, Pilates for construction workers, Pilates for office workers, Pilates for for back pain, whatever it is. Like you can fill in the blank with anything, that I think that's the quote unquote marketing strategy that has been lacking. And I don't feel like we're making some groundbreaking like revelations right now, but I think we just need to be more consistent with it,
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like bar a little bit. Like you think of bar, you think, oh, that's for like women. Like most like dudes are gonna say, oh, that's for women. Pilates might have got a little bit of that same connotation, right?
Yes.
Oh, it's for women. It's expensive, maybe. I don't. Like it's gonna have all these surrounding things around Pilates,
these
but
barriers,
it's like, so it's kind of breaking down those barriers a little bit and saying like, oh no, it's, like even bar, there's like, you have to do bar for men, bar,
Yes.
bar for this, bar for that. So it's kind of like all those things you have to kind of like rebrand it a little bit until hopefully it's you don't have to do that anymore. It may
Yes.
take a little bit of time to get to that, but you
Yeah.
know, this is part of that, right?
Right. What's that fascinating there? So I find there's still a Pilates for women mindset out there. So seeing men do it and brand it like you're saying makes a big difference. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm going to start to do that, and I'm going to use that as an experiment for this week, and just going to throw out like a bunch of stuff and just see which one sticks. Right? Like maybe
Yeah.
every day have like Pilates for office workers, Pilates
Yep.
for warehouse workers, Pilates
Right.
for
Yeah.
just like every demographic of men under the
Yeah.
sun, and just see
Yeah.
which
Right.
one sticks. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it, and we need to just take our time with that and just let people see it happening. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a guy here that I did Pilates with this morning, and it was the second session. He's a guy who's on the gym floor, learning squats and deadlifts and stuff, and just understanding his body in a new way. So now he's coming to Pilates and loving it.
Yeah.
And so we did like some of the tower work last week, and we did some reformer last week. So
Yeah.
today I was like, okay, we are just doing exercises on the mat. And it'll
Yep.
be like intermediate, and I don't really like to say like beginner, intermediate, advanced, but I do kind of differentiate them just so people understand. Because he's strong, so there's going to be some advanced exercise that'll be like light work for him, and there'll
Mm-hmm.
be some basic exercise that he just plain can't do because of mobility, right? So
Yep.
we're going to ebb and flow with it. But we did the exercises, and then at the end he's like, so wait, so this is mat Pilates? I was like, no, this is Pilates.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, because then it gets out there like, oh, I did just mat Pilates today. Like, well, no, it's all Pilates.
Right. Yeah. It's all. Yeah. Yeah. There's no
There's
separation, right?
there's no separation. It just so happened that we work with the mat work, so you couldn't hide with some cord helping you to find your range of
Right.
motion. You had
Yeah.
it was
had to
just
use
you
you.
and you today. Yeah.
Yep. You have to use you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Pilates, right? It is. I find that like when guys start to take it, they kind of like it. Like the ones that do it, they're like it becomes like part of their thing, right? They're
Yes.
like so the guys who have come to like, whether it's any type of Pilates, they're like I like it, So
Yes.
so it's one of those things. Like the more I think you see more, and I think more other people than us doing it, other than instructors, more
Yes.
just like, hey, I just like to go take Pilates class with some other guys, and
Right.
it's cool,
Yeah.
So
And it's funny you say that. Like, it is cool in the sense too that like it's funny how like maybe just the male mind works, but like you don't do it and you look at, oh, that's for women, that's soft. You
yeah,
do it and then you're like, yeah, LeBron James does this and so do I. Like there's a
right,
pride. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
and Kobe does it, yeah,
Kobe did it. Right. So
yeah,
there's this mindset now. Now I'm all of a sudden I'm elite because I do Pilates like
right,
these guys.
right,
You know?
yeah, no, that's for
So
sure,
yeah. I'll introduce some Pilates principles into workouts and start to explain. Yeah, exactly. I've seen him do that too. When he does his workouts, Pat does he does these workouts like every day online and just has like a different theme to each day. I see him weaving in some of those Pilates exercises and pointing people back to to people who do Pilates, right? And I
yep,
love that he does that because it's
yeah,
like
that's cool,
that's what we need to do, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
we're not so elite on this side to say like, don't do that. Like you need to have a degree to do that. Like it's movement.
yep,
It's movement.
yeah,
Yeah. So yes, and start transitioning. Exactly. And that's it. I think like when you have this movement continuum mindset like you do, it's all movement. We can all just celebrate
mm-hmm.
someone on this path to where they need to go. What's your thoughts on like goal setting? And what I mean by that is like we
Yeah,
mentioned in terms of fitness and success, and you were very quick to say on finding your path, like it's not about getting to somewhere, it's about the journey itself. So
mm-hmm.
when someone comes to you and says, I want to achieve, I want to get to something, do you kind of hash out what their goals, their fitness goals would be?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have a plan. You can have a plan to kind of figure out or intricate parts to kind of get somewhere. in terms of if you, like some people are number people, right? They want, I want to lose 5 pounds, I want to lose 10 pounds, right? And they kind of like help them to realize that like all these other little components are going to help you get to that 5 pounds, but it's not so like you're going to do these exercises, eat this food, and do this, and you're going to get there by 30 days. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it, about the path and the journey, right? And then so I've had people like I'll do goal setting with people. Like I kind of want to know like what like it's kind of a question to see where their mindset is.
Yes.
Like okay, let me see what they're thinking, how they think. I might say, all right, so what's your goal? Like just to kind of see. And then it's kind of like you don't have to like trick people a little bit until like, like okay, yeah, that's a good goal. And then you don't even like really like, it's like
Right.
it's more about this big picture, right? So
Yeah,
like,
let's put that goal over here.
yeah,
And we're going
okay,
to
yeah. It's like okay, and it's almost like you have to like Mr. Miyagi train them, like
yeah.
like
Yes.
it's like you got to paint some fences, you got to wax on, wax off before like, and you don't even realize they're training, and then next thing you know, they're like, oh, I can do karate, like so you kind of like I kind of have to like that's like my goal. That's my goal is to be like the Mr. Miyagi of training when I'm like 80. Like it's
Yeah.
like it's gonna be all these weird like approaches to like health and wellness, and you don't realize you're doing anything.
Yes. Yes. That's
But
awesome.
so yeah, like so I do it, then I don't do it. So it's kind of like
Yes.
a weird thing.
Yeah. So if I went to you and said I want to increase my bench press, you'd be like, okay, well, go wax my car and come back
yeah, right. And then I need you to like clean my house, and then we'll go outside, and like
yeah, I'd
shovel.
be like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, right. And the next thing you know,
Right.
but you do it like, but it's like we kind of do that, right? Like you probably
Yep.
throw some Pilates stuff in with people, and they don't even realize it,
Right.
right? It's like
Yes.
or something else in there, and they don't even realize like it's like or yoga movements are like. Oh, you're like, you were doing some yoga, and they're like, I was, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you are, like,
Yes. Yeah.
so you kind of have to kind of sneak it in there a little bit. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's
yeah,
true, and that's a great strategy. Kind of like low key tactic to get people into where they need to go.
yeah,
Um, Tell me about your book, man. Like we've already
yeah,
done one, and now what's the new one rolling out?
yeah. So we got Frankie does Pilates. Yeah, it spawned from a lot of this from our conversation when we had back our first one. That was when maybe June.
Yes.
We had all six of us on the Melton Brothers Pilates page. So on that Zoom call, we just kind of talked about what we wanted it to look like, right?
Yes.
How can we make Pilates accessible? How's it going to educate and be inclusive, right? So
Yes.
all these talks, from Black Girl Pilates to us, to just talking with other instructors from um, Karen from Pilates Nerd, Erica, even just seeing all this stuff and the times that we're in, it was like, all right, we got to do something else. And for me,
Mm.
it's always been kids, right? It's always
Yes.
started from that. Even navigating through these times, people asking, how do I talk? Like, what can I do? I can't be silent about race and racism, and what can I do? And I've always told them, talk to your kids about it. Talk to your nieces, your nephews.
Yes.
And for me, it was always that, and that's where it starts. If you can give them a little gem, a little kernel, a little whatever to get them to be open minded, and they'll carry that with them. Right. So,
Yes.
and that's kind of where the book started from. Like, we have a fitness book, a nutrition book, and a meditation book. So whether they learn something from those books, hopefully you hope they take something away and continue that. So
Yes.
that's where the fourth one came, I was like, well, we got to do a Pilates one.
Amazing.
It made sense. It was right timing. I'm a big believer in timing and making all these connections, and it was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
So we just, did a deep dive into like, okay, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to write the book, I'm going to take my time with it, use the same illustrator as I always do. And, it was, let's just do a Kickstarter and get it off. And we hit the goal, like literally like 2 weeks ahead of time, so
Yes.
that's always a good sign.
Right.
And the goal is to kind of get it to start locally here in Baltimore City and get it into some schools here.
Hmm.
Now that we've hit the goal, but yeah, it's underway. Illustrations are being done as we speak, and should be done at the end of September, and hopefully roll it out by November.
That
Start
is
getting some
awesome.
press. Yeah, man. And I appreciate you promoting and contributing and all this thing. So I mean, I really,
Yeah.
it's amazing to see kind of what's happened in the last 2 to 3 months.
Yes.
So yeah,
I love your level of involvement with it too. I mean, because it wouldn't be hard to just go to a bank and get money and just,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, and but there's something to be said about actually getting the community
Hmm.
invested in this process. Like I'm excited about the process and just watch you hit gold and just watching other people talk about it and those kind of things. Like that is the real success in this before it even gets printed.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, and this is going to kind of come back to where we are too. I've always like been a believer, like you can do this too. Like I'm nobody special. I just did it,
Yes.
and it's about connections and reaching out to people, because we all need help from someone else other than just us, and me.
Hmm.
Um, and like you said, like hitting goal, and it does. It's a community effort. It's
Yes.
not just one person. So
Yeah.
um, yeah.
And I think that, and with you saying like we all can do it, and
Hmm.
but I love the fact that you're doing it, so I don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like it's like Erica's saying. Like you mean like we have boundaries. We know what we can do and when to refer. So like you do that, like, and you do that well. Like so you'll see. Like I'm totally there to support you, to promote
Yep.
it, to invest in it, all these different things because I love the fact that as much as I love you're doing, I also love the fact I don't have to do it.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
But that's life, right?
yes,
You don't want to like do everything, right? You need help. You want to be able to delegate things out and be like, I don't do that. Like that's them. Like they do the
yeah,
yoga, go to them, let them teach you the yoga stuff. That's the I don't do massage. Like yeah,
yeah.
I'll teach you how to foam roll a little bit, but that's about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's that's the
like
end of my scope right there.
yeah, that's about
Yeah.
it, right? So, but yeah, I think that's, we all have to recognize that about ourselves, right? We have to
Mm-hmm.
recognize our lane, stay in our lane, and
Yep.
what we're good at and what we're not good at, and support those who are doing, you know, who are the masters, right? And who've been
Yes.
doing it, right? So,
Right, right, right. That kind of makes me think of a kind of a philosophical question I used to ask my staff when I would train like our trainers and stuff like that. I would always ask them like if you have two skill sets on the scale of 1 to 10 and you are a 7 out of 10 on one skill set and a 3 out of 10 on another skill set, do you spend your energy making your 7 a 8 or your 3 a 4? Do you make
that's
yourself better at something that you're good at, or do you make
yeah, that's
yourself
a great
good at
question.
something that you're okay at?
That's a great question.
There's no real right answer, but I'm just curious which one you make your 7 to 8 or make your 3 or 4.
Yeah, I guess with me in self-awareness, I think I would do the 7 to 8, and realize that like the three doesn't mean I don't ever have to do it, but like it just, again, it's kind of like any other modality practices, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah, like I might be a 3 at it, so I just need to keep the three. Doesn't mean I can't learn and become a 4, but it's like but I'm better at the 7. I'm gonna do that. I want to get better at that and
Yes.
become. So I think it'd probably be the 7 to 8, and just learning your own self-awareness.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
usually I'm the 7 to 8 as well.
yeah,
But I've heard some really good arguments for the 3 to 4. Like people want to
mm-hmm.
feel competent. They want to feel
Right,
capable. And like you said at the beginning, like there's a part of us that wants to be a Renaissance man. I want to say we're good at
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I want to be able to like light a fire with two sticks and also be able to, like figure out a math
Hunt.
equation, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
right, right. Do it all.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And some people are good at that. There are people who can make that three like a 6 or 7.
Yes.
And I'm like, good for them. You can do it and like and navigate it well, and and be very like, competent in it, hey,
And
do
not
you.
sacrifice your seven.
Right, and that's right, and that's it, and not sacrifice the seven, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the big thing, yeah.
yeah. Very good, man. So when is the book release?
So it's going to be November. All the Kickstarter people. So if you donate a Kickstarter, you'll be one of the first people to get it. Or if you did the pre-order, so you'll be one of the first people to get it. And then once the Kickstarter is over, September 3rd, I believe, we'll go back to pre-order just through my website. So you'll get that actually when the book comes out in November, but it might get pushed up if things get if we get underway and the formatting and all that stuff happens.
Mhm.
We'll push it up maybe end of October.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
but it's always nice to give yourself that space to kind of market, get it
Yes.
out there and that kind of thing. So I
Right.
usually kind of like to kind of have that room at least a good month to do that. So
Right. That's amazing.
yeah.
This was this all trial and error? Did you have someone kind of coach you through this process from start to finish with the previous books?
Yeah, so it was a lot of it is trial and error. It's like through the first book, you learn your mistakes from like the first one, what you need to do, and kind of bring that to the second one, like how you want it to look and feel, and what you want to add and take out, and just all that stuff. And then you slowly get better and better at it, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like I saw like the other day, like one of my meditation mentors, like Watkins. If you don't follow him, he's awesome. He does these great conversations every day.
Amazing. Yeah.
Um, but he's the other day he had one is like you don't like it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just like you're just learning, right?
Yes.
So it's just like you have to kind of reframe like how you learn certain things.
Yes.
It's not a necessary mistake. You just carry that over to the next thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So each book has kind of been like that. So it becomes easier. It's not that it's harder; it just becomes easier, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then this book, it's like easier to do. It's like, oh, okay, you kind of just roll through it a little bit easier and a little more seamlessly.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's great, man. I'm so excited for you with this, Jason. Like, honestly, and it's cool to know that I met you when your other books had rolled out, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
"What? This guy writes books?" Like, I thought it
Yeah.
was a novel thing to me, and so now to see this process from start to finish, like witness it from start to finish, I'm like so excited for it. So cheering you on as always, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And like kind of like you were talking, like, kind of building something now around it with the Pilates, like we were talking about how like is this like a program now?
Yes. Yeah.
To bring this to schools and and that's
Hmm.
probably the next step,
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
like figuring that out and what that's gonna look like.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I'll
um
definitely help you craft that. Like, I mean, because that book, like,
yeah.
especially in Canada, like, there's nothing like that at all. So I'd love to get that in schools here, and
Yeah.
to walk in, read the book, take them through Pilates classes, like to build a
Yeah.
whole program around that. That's how
Yeah.
we lead by example. And we have 4 minutes left here, but
Okay.
one of the things that was I remember a friend of mine saying, we're talking about the next generation, was to give them wins now, right? To show them wins
Yeah.
now. So you have yourself a successful fitness professional, you have your business, you're an author. Yes, the books can be great for the next generation, but they're also seeing your wins right now.
Hmm.
And I think that that is just as
Yeah.
powerful as what's going to happen next. So like, good for you, man. Like, honestly, you're doing awesome work.
Yeah, it's like, and then going into the schools and they see that, and you'll, and I don't know how much I mean, you have kids, but you like working with going into kids or going
Yes.
into school, and they ask you those questions. They're like, well, what's your day like? Or are you like,
Yes.
especially if you get like the older kids, like I've done some living classroom, like we have a program here called Living Classrooms in Baltimore, and it's all ages, and then you go and speak to these kids, and they're like, yeah, what's your day like? Oh, you get to make your own schedule? That's cool, and
Mm-hmm.
they ask those questions, and then they see that, and they're like,
Yes.
and it's things that they never thought that they could either become or do,
Yes.
other than just I want to be the doctor or the lawyer or the dentist or the, whatever. It's like, oh, I might want to be a trainer,
Right.
I might want to be a massage, whatever, or nutritionist or
Yes.
dietitian. So it's
Right.
cool to see them want to have like different aspirations other than just like your typical things, So
Yes. Nice, man.
yeah,
Keep being the leader, man.
yeah, you too.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we're gonna change the world,
No